has also provided apologies. Councillor Sally Nicholson is substituting.
Could we add Councillor Allen to the apologies as well? I think it's quite late notice. She might not be able to make it, and in all seriousness, given the agenda, might not be here for the end. So if we could do that, I'd be grateful. Do we have any declarations of interest at this stage? No. If not, usual rules apply. If anything occurs to you during the meeting, wait till whoever's speaking has finished, and then I'll bring you in at that point just to get that on the record. Item number 3 are the minutes of the minutes of the last meeting, 24th of April. Anything on those anyone wants to raise before I sign them off? No, in which case I would do that. And Angela, if you could pass those over, I'd be grateful. Chair's urgent business. Just like to welcome a couple of people. Sally, I think this is your first meeting, is that right? You're welcome to join us. They won't all be this heavy and bogged down with detail, I'm sure. And it's always nice to welcome former members of the committee back who have gone on to greater things and served with great distinction since we last met. So Tina, it's great to have you with us. I don't know what you've been doing for the last 12 months, and Rebecca, it's nice to have you back as well. Shocking. Do we have any questions from members of the public? No. We'll go straight in then to item 6, the applications. Item 6.1 is first at page 5. We're at 5 Springfield Avenue, and Ethan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We'll wait for it to come on. There we go. This planning application is coming to committee as a Plymouth City Council employee application. The application site is 5 Springfield Avenue in the Plymouth-Stoke-Dunstan ward. The proposal is for a front dormer, the extension of a rear dormer, a side garage and boundary fencing. These are the only aspects requiring planning permission and are thus being considered. On the screen now is a Google satellite image of the surrounding area, showing the site marked in red. We had no objections from our National Infrastructure team and South West Water consultees. A condition including the provision of a bat and bird box on the building has been attached to the consent. The local highways authority objected to the proposal due to loss of parking and a lack of provision of parking. However, the applicant under permitted development has obtained a drop curb that has been given consent from the network management team and a front hard stand, which will allow for the off-street parking demand to be satisfied. As such, there are no grounds for refusal here. This can be demonstrated by the slide on the screen now. The following 2 slides show the surrounding streetscape with front dormers seen as a key feature for bungalows in the area. This slide shows number 7's parking arrangements and front dormer. On the screen now is the direct neighbour to the north, number 2 Mina Park Close. This front dormer was given planning consent in 2018 and is on a similar scale to the size of the proposed front dormer at our relevant site. This slide shows the existing and proposed site plans for the property. We can see the location of the garage behind a large hard standing to the side of the property, with the existing detached garage being converted to an outbuilding seen at the top of the plan. Whilst the garage and hard standing to the rear will be lost, a new garage and larger hard standing are being implemented to ensure no loss in off-street parking. In addition, whilst the garage is close to a highway and access to the garage for a car may be tricky, the proposed garage is not required to contribute to the off-street parking supply for the property. As such, the side garage is seen as acceptable. This slide shows a side-by-side comparison of the front, rear, and side elevations of the property. With the precedent set for front dormers with similar massing in the area as shown on previous slides, there are no concerns here from a visual perspective. The extension of the rear dormer is not deemed harmful by officers, given the existing rear dormer and prominence of rear dormers in the area. The impact of the dormer will be less significant than the front dormer due to its rear location. The side garage warrants no concerns from officers and gives the potential for future EV charging. The boundary fence seen on the proposed side elevation requires planning permission due to it being adjacent to a highway, Springfield Rise, and above 1 meter in height. The proposed wooden boundary fencing will be 1.8 meters high, wrapping around the side boundary and the rear boundary of the property. Whilst it is a downgrade visually compared to a hedgerow, it is not seen as a strong reason for refusal, as fencing is appropriate boundary treatment for most residential sites. With no letters of representation, one consultee objection where the refusal reasons have been overcome by permitted development, and with no significantly adverse impacts highlighted regarding visual impact and amenity, we are recommending conditional approval. Thank you.
Ethan, thank you very much. Normally we wouldn't go this far with an employee one, but it just struck me that these sort of household ones do have the potential to sometimes be difficult and cause unexpected problems. So I thought it was useful just to at least give us the opportunity of hearing the full presentation and having whatever length of debate the committee seems might want to have. So is now time for the committee. Any questions or comments? Does anyone want to kick off? Patrick?
Chair, thank you for the presentation, but I think it's a straightforward application, and I'm happy to propose that we conditionally approve it.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to worry about with this one, but belt and braces, it's always good just to avoid any potential problems. So the recommendation is to grant conditionally, as we see on page 5. I'm happy to support that, so if we could do the necessary, please. Okay, so the ayes to the right were 12. You're not listening at all then, not listening. I will declare that one passed unanimously by those who are present. So thank you very much. 6.2 is next, and we'll just wait for our colleagues to get ready.
Chair, before we start,
yes,
can I just convey Councillor Ricketts' apologies. As a ward member, he did intend to be here and speak on this application, but he has a Mutley and Greenback Residents Association AGM, which he's having to chair, so apologies.
No, that's fine. He did let me know via the officers, so but I appreciate you bringing it to our attention there. Page 13, item 6.2, and we're at 41 Houndescombe Road. And Sam, in your own time, please.
Thank you. The proposal before members is the conversion of 41 Houndescombe Road from a Class E commercial use, with the property last used by an accountancy firm, to 3 flats. The scheme is being considered under Class MA of Part 3 of the General Permitted Development Order, so the application is for prior approval and is not an application for planning permission. As such, the application can only be considered using the specific points set out in Class MA, which I'll go through shortly. The principle of the change of use is already considered acceptable by the legislation, so this application could not be refused due to the loss of the office space. No external alterations to the building are proposed, and none can be considered under this application route. So that's the property there, a 2-storey mid-terrace property. The internal layout of the property would be altered slightly. This is the existing layout of the property, and this is the proposed layout of the property, which the ground floor would have one 2-bed flat with 2 1-bed flats on the first floor. The basement area is not included within the application, so no flats or anything are proposed for the basement. The following points are the only considerations under which this application can be considered. So the transport impacts of the development, contamination risks, flooding risks, impacts of noise from nearby commercial premises, the impact of potential change of use if the site falls within a conservation area, which this site doesn't, the provision of adequate natural light in all habitable rooms, the impact of heavy industry in the local area, if this proposal would lead to the loss of a nursery or health centre, and if relevant, which is not the case in this application, if it met the fire risk condition. This relates to tall buildings, not schemes of this nature. Officers have no concerns relating to the above points. Neither the Highway Authority nor the lead local flood authority raised any objections to the proposal, although a cycle storage condition has been recommended by the Highway Authority. All 3 flats also meet the nationally described space standards, which is also a requirement of these applications. The prior approval changes of use routes are designed to allow existing buildings which can be converted to residential without significant alterations required to be done without going through a formal planning application. Officers consider that this site meets all the requirements of the relevant class, and therefore it's recommended that prior approval is given for the proposal.
Sam, thank you. Thank you very much. Excuse me. We've obviously heard Councillor Ricketts is giving his apology today. He was the only booked speaker, so it's now open to the committee for any questions or comments. Don't all rush forward at once, please. Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. I think the greatest issue with this is more for creating and maintaining sustainable communities. And I hear exactly what the planning officer has said in the presentation. We are covered to an extent by the permitted development rules that the government has changed and therefore created a situation where a lot of these applications are more or less automatic. But I don't know from a planning officer perspective how a community maintains sustainability if in effect the other uses in a neighbourhood, like employment uses or other uses that create a sustainable community, are lost through permitted development. And this is really, again, prescribed to us as a planning committee on our local communities that will see actually the demise of sustainability in a community. So if you take this particular area, clearly it's predominantly residential. There's an element of retail on North Hill, and the residential element tends to be heavily student accommodation and subdivision of former family homes. So I can see the community's concern potentially of losing yet another business opportunity, a business use in a community that would help sustainability in a community where people can live, work, enjoy the local community without having to travel. So it is disappointing that really the hands are tied in many respects of councillors in this regard, and it's effectively really here for rubber stamping, I would suggest, that there isn't really the ability to make real decisions on it because, as the officers outlined, there are only certain categorisations that really can be challenged on this application. So it is disappointing that we will see a continuation of this, not only in this application but throughout Plymouth, where we will see that sustainability challenge substantially reduced in time. I totally agree we need to provide accommodation, but equally do need to provide employment opportunities in local areas, and this is a loss of an employment opportunity, which is sad to see, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. I completely appreciate where Patrick is coming from on this and can see that actually these kind of permitted development rules do take away a bit of control locally. However, knowing that particular area as well as I do, I actually think the gain of 3 homes in those sort of flat arrangements, given the need for accommodation in the city, given the need for homes, the number of people that are homeless in the city, and the fact that ultimately it would have been a small commercial property rather than offering a service to the people that live around there. I have to say I actually welcome the additional homes that this will be providing, and I'm very pleased to see it's not a HMO, it's actually 3 flats, which for that particular area I think is quite welcome. And so, although I completely agree with what Patrick is saying about the generality of the changes in the legislation, in this particular case I welcome it, and I'd be happy to propose we move to a vote if you wish.
We've got a couple of other people. Josh was first.
Thanks, Chair. Rebecca largely stole my thunder there. Much the same. I think, that property would have been a residential property originally, as I see that. We have a massive demand, and I feel that, sustainable cities and sustainable living, have to include evolution. So we've seen residential properties turn to commercial, and maybe in this case, seeing one turn back to 3 residential properties is actually a win. And I see that actually as quite a sustainable use. So yeah, I also would propose that we move to the vote. Thank you.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah, I'm not sure why we're talking about sort of the general national planning framework when considering this application. The idea that there's any problem with loss of business space on an area that's right next to Mutley Plain, right next to North Hill, is obviously not true. So I think we should get on and move to the vote. There's nothing controversial about it.
I hope we will do that after we've heard from Anne.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one question, please, just about condition 2, time limits. So it says the development hereby permitted shall be completed before the expiration of 3 years, beginning from the date of this permission. I thought they normally, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I thought they normally had 3 years to start the work, but this is 3 years to finish the work. There may be a difference in that, so if someone can explain it to me.
Yeah, so you're right in most cases. So if we grant planning permission, then then yes, we would put a commencement condition on, which basically means that if work doesn't start within a required timescale, then the application dies essentially, and which I suppose is to take into account changing legislation, etc. With these applications, which are essentially kind of given consent by principle in a different piece of legislation. Again, I would assume it's for similar reasons. It's to take into account that the GPDO is updated on a semi-regular basis, but the legislation for those is that it's completed rather than commenced in that time period. It's just it's being assessed under a different bit of legislation.
Anybody else? Okay, again, I think fairly straightforward. It is absolutely key for me that we're actually reverting the property back into a domestic dwelling as opposed to anything else. It was intended as a house, and that's what we're going back to, albeit split up in a number of ways. We are here extremely close, as has been said, both to North Hill and Mutley Plain, where there is a regular turnover of use of commercial properties, and areas above those, which I think, like the former use here, wouldn't necessarily require a shop front counter service, if you like, but can be done in private offices. So I don't think we're losing out. We do have a housing crisis, as we often remind ourselves, and this is a very small but I think significant contribution we can make to alleviate that, and another step forward. So I'm happy to support the recommendation, which is the prior approval that's being sought. And if we can move to the vote again, please. Yeah, I will declare that one approved. Thank you very much again, everybody. Item number 7 is the list of planning application decisions. Is there anything on there that anybody wants to speak about, raise or ask a question of? No? Okay, we will note those, and then we go on to the appeal decisions. Stuart, is there anything by exception that you want to raise with us in terms of issues coming out of the appeals from the inspectorate?
Just one thing, Chair, if I may. So the appeal decision on Mutley Plain is an interesting one because it was testing effectively the grounds of our policy in relation to hot food takeaways and their proximity to schools. So the inspector dismissed the appeal on those grounds. So that was an interesting test case, I think, in relation to that criteria. But it's stood the test of time, in you like, for the appeal.
Good to know. Anything else on appeals from colleagues? No. We will note that in that case, and there being no exempt business as far as I'm aware, I will declare the meeting closed. Sorry it went on so long. I hope you haven't been delayed from your next appointments, and see you in a few weeks' time.